Hello and welcome to Gotham City Knights. This is a channel focused on all elements of Batman Miniatures Game of 3rd Edition from Knight models. This specific series is focused on giving new and returning players to the game the tools and information to approach their first few games of Batman Miniatures Game of 3rd Edition. I'm Kaiwas and let's dive into this video's topic. We've talked about building your deck and we've talked about using them during your activations. Let's look in depth at how objective cards work. Objective cards are the only road to victory in Batman 3rd Edition. Completing them will earn you victory points, and at the end of the game you compare victory points with your opponent to see who is the victor. Before we delve into the specifics about objective cards, let's look at one of the key rules surrounding it. That is the maximum hand size. As we described in the pre-game video, you draw 4 cards into your hand from your objective deck at the start of the game. At any stage, whenever you play an objective from hand, either as an objective or a resource, or you have a card discarded from your hand from some sort of effect, you must immediately draw back up to 4 cards. Conversely, if at any time your hand is actually bigger than 4 cards through some sort of effect, you must choose one of your cards and discard it to the bottom of your objective deck to go back down to 4 cards. So I've mentioned a couple of times throughout this video series that the objective cards have multiple uses. That is the objective itself, which is the top half of the card, and the resource, which is the bottom half of the card. Remember also, you can use an objective from your hand once per activation, and the same is true for a resource. This means that you can play a resource or an objective on your opponent's activations as well as your own, as long as you can fulfill the requirement. Now let's look at the layout of an objective card. In the top left of the card, there are 2 numbers, one which is larger than the other. The large number is the amount of victory points that you will accumulate for completing this objective. The small number in the card, as mentioned in the objective deck setup video, is the amount of copies of this card that will be in your deck. In the yellow box towards the top half of the card are the requirements and the effects of the objective card being played as an objective. These will be things that you need to fulfill either instantly or throughout your turn in order to score the card at the specified time. Aside from the requirements to score the card, in the resource section there are 3 symbols on the top left. The first of which is the type of objective this is, be it violence, menace, control, or protection. The second is the phase of the game in which this card can be played from hand, that being phase 1, 2, 3, or 4. And the last one is related to when this card is able to be scored. So you'll see there are 3 different types of symbols here, one of which is a star, which is an instant score, which means that the requirements of the card must be fulfilled instantly. There is a diamond, which is a specific timing which is described in the card itself. And finally, there is an end of round symbol, which looks like a clock. This card can be played and committed to throughout the round, but will only score at the end of the round. In the bottom half of the card, in the white section, is the description of the related resource on the card. There will also be a little resource cost beside a lightning symbol. This is how many resource points you must expend in order to play this resource from hand. As well, if there are any requirements or specific situations, you must fulfill those before being able to play this card from hand. Let's look at a couple of examples. First up is the Overdrive card from the base set. As you can see in the top left, this scores 2 points when completed, and there is 1 copy in the deck. In the objective section, you've got a triangle, which is the menace symbol. Then you've got the 3, which means it can only be played in phase 3. And you've got the ninja star as the scoring timing, which means the requirements of the card have to be fulfilled immediately in order to score it. So specifically, Overdrive reads, when an enemy model makes an effort to defend itself against your model's attack, don't declare an effort for your model. So in order to score this card and play it from your hand, you would have to be during an activation where you're performing an attack against an enemy model and the explained requirements occur. Once they occur, you play it from hand and it will score. Then you would draw back up to 4 cards. So let's look at a second example. This one is stick to the plan. As you can see again, it scores 2 victory points, but there are actually 3 copies of it in your objective deck. This has the cog wheel icon, and that means it is a control objective, and it can only be played during phase 4, the recount phase. Again, it has the ninja star icon, so whenever it is played from hand, the requirement must be fulfilled immediately. The requirement in this case is you must have more suspect markers than your opponent in play. So if in phase 4 you have that upper hand at the start, you play that card out of your hand and score it. Then you would draw back up to 4 cards. Next example up is Die Hard. Die Hard is again a generic objective. It gets you 2 points and there is only 1 copy in the deck. You can see it has a little body armor vest as the icon. That is a protection objective. It has to be committed to during phase 1, and it has the clock icon, meaning it is checked to score at the end of the round. Die Hard reads, choose one of your models, may not be the boss. If that model is not KO or removed as a casualty, score this objective. So this means in this case you'd be choosing the miniature as soon as you play the card from hand in phase 1, hopefully trying to identify someone that is not going to get hurt this turn. And then if they are still not KO or not removed as casualty, in phase 4, in the recount phase, you would score these 2 points. As soon as you play the card from hand in phase 1, you would draw back up to 4 cards. Finally, we take a look at the wait for backup card, which is one of the Batman objectives from the starter set. Again, it's going to get you 2 points if you score it, and there's only 1 copy in your deck. In this case, it has the pistol icon, which means it is a violence objective. It is played in phase 3, and it has the diamond scoring timing, which means the scoring timing will be actually explained within the card itself. So it reads, play during the activation of a friendly model with the cop trait. Choose a board edge and roll 1d6 plus 1. Place a number counter with a value equal to the roll on the chosen cop character's card. Reduce the value of that by 1 at the end of each subsequent model activation. If, when the counter is reduced to 0, the model is still within 4 inches of the chosen board edge and is not knocked out, score this card. So as you can see, it specifically calls out that it is scored during the round whenever that numerical counter reaches 0. In this case, again, you would commit to this card during the cop's activation and play it from hand. As soon as you play it from hand, you would draw back up to 4 cards. So to recap, you can play as many objective cards as you wish during phase 1, 2 and 4 of the round, and 1 per activation in phase 3. Please note, however, that you cannot score the 2 copies of the same card at the exact same time in any round. We've talked at length on how you can score objective cards from your hand, but remember, once you score an objective card, it will be put in your scored pile and you won't be able to use the tasty resource at the bottom. Don't forget that resources can actually help you push towards victory as much as the objectives themselves when used at the right times. Let's look at how they work now. Just like with objectives, resources are played to the same sorts of limits, with any amount being able to be played in phase 1, 2 and 4, and 1 per activation, including opponent's activations, in phase 3. The specific timing of resources is slightly looser than that of objective cards because there is no phase requirement specifically on the resources. There will, however, be a lot of resource cards that are going to trigger off the back of activations, so a lot of them will end up being played in phase 3 of the round. As a rule of thumb, you and your opponent might want to consider only allowing resources to be played from hand at the end of any specific action, allowing for a window for your opponent to play something so that you can react rather than halfway through one. When you play a resource from hand, you must be able to pay the amount of resource points that it costs to play. This is indicated, as I said, in the small lightning bolt icon at the bottom of the card. And the situation must be appropriate for the specific effect of the resource. Once the resource card is played and the effect is resolved, the spent resource card goes into a specific pile face up for this. These cards will be reshuffled into your objective deck at the end of the round. So let's look at a specific example before we move on. Looking again at the stick to the plan card, we can look at the resource section now. You can see the resource costs one specific resource point, and it can be played at any time throughout the round. There's no requirement for it to be in phase 1, 2, 3 or 4. It asks you to choose a friendly henchman within 4 inches of one of your suspect markers, and that can be the case at any time. You then get to remove that marker in order to give that henchman 4 inches of extra movement distance until the end of the round. Once you would play that card from hand, it would go into your spent resources pile, and you would draw back up to 4 cards. Well folks, that's all you should need to know about objective cards and resources in order to get your first game going. One thing to note that is a little bit of a tip is that you might want to spend cards from your hand as a resource if you don't have any viable objectives to score this time. That's in order to cycle through your deck a little bit to try and get a card that you can actually score in the current state. All that's left to say is thank you for watching this short video. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. Keep watching the series to learn about all the elements of Batman Miniatures Game 3rd Edition. And if you have friends interested in the game, please consider sharing this series to them. If you want to see us put all this into action, check out our Battle Report series, where we usually post a battle report between myself and my colleague Salandra once every 2 weeks. We also hope to start putting out tactics, strategy and miniature spotlight videos to continue the discussion and showcase this great game. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with our content, and we'll see you next time.